Yay, live! We love live.
Hello and welcome everyone to chatWater, the show where we talk all things Blackwater. We have once again with us one of our nearest and dearest, Matt. Good to have you back to help us round out the Elemental Chaos arc. Right? That's the one
Yes.
we're doing?
You
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah, yeah. Good. Oh boy. But
Before we get to that, I'm going to set the
before we get
timer
to
for
that,
30 minutes for us to talk about the previous and starting and now.
so
Guys,
last session was a big one, huh?
Yeah.
it was crazy. It was actually crazy. I mean, I literally I always rewatch these things sort of generally right before we go live, so it's completely fresh in my mind. And it was, I mean, you guys were I don't think you guys have ever had a plan go as smoothly but also not. Like, you
That's
guys
true.
made a plan and the plan went pretty much perfectly.
Yeah, every
You were
part of our
like,
plan that we set did happen, which is
did work.
exciting.
and it happened like decently easily. Like, it was like you guys, the dice rolls came through on the plan when you needed them to,
Yep.
very successfully. Yana was able to very easily, tear it. She struggled a little to close it, but very easily able to cause the rift, which was something we didn't even know if it was gonna work.
No.
We didn't know if it was gonna be possible. So, like, plan wise, I mean, it was pretty ideal. The plan actually worked. You stuck to the plan. That's always a big one.
We did stick to the plan. We didn't bail from the plan. That's really good. I think sometimes I don't know if we've bailed from plans in the past, but they've gotten 3/4 and we've had to abandon said plan because they've just not been working. But
Yeah,
this
it's
one,
not that you bailed. It's just that they weren't always actually good.
Some plans are worth not following through on.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I think often we have like 80% of information, and then we make a plan, and then we show up and we go, "Oh, this will not work."
Yeah.
What we
that last
planned
20%
is bad. And I think we got just the reason it worked is that we got lucky that our 80%, the extra 20% we guessed this time was close enough for the plan to keep going.
The only thing we really didn't accommodate for, like, we figured out that the priestesses would likely be there. Like,
Yeah.
we had a sense that was going to be the only thing we didn't accommodate for because we didn't know, our characters didn't know, was Cordelia.
Mhm.
Which was an absolutely fantastic reveal.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of sad. I mean, how she ended up in that situation. I mean, we weren't big fans of her before.
Yeah.
But it's got to be rough. You guys essentially did essentially leave her,
So
assuming she'd figure out her own.
can I just I'll offer a little
course.
clarification. So a little bit of extra backstory and context before Sean jumps in, because I want to do this before Sean, and then I want to hear what Sean
I hate
has to
Cordelia
say.
so fucking much. I hate on like a philosophical level. Anyways, go on.
So Captain Shade, Cordelia, as we saw, I think it was in episode 3 or 4, was the captain that was going to take us back from Manta back to Icemead via boat, which was when we got the call to Philenis that Philenis was under attack. So we had to plane shift and just bop over to Philenis, because we had the skies were yellow in Philenis. So I knew some extra information, me as Emma, not Neppy, because of the other campaign that I played in. So we, in the other campaign, had a skyship, and this was set over in Ishion, which was like a continent away. So after we left, the ship, the Nightshade, which was Cordelia's ship, started to sail back from Manta. And while they did not encounter any of the like ghostly figures that we had on the way there, they encountered the sirens, and their plans to shove their ears and tie themselves to the masts were not effective enough. And essentially, Cordelia, as she said, had to watch her entire crew drown themselves. She was the only one left. Their ship capsized, like it was bad, and she was saved, likely by the Raven Queen. Or the Matron of Vengeance. So the reason that I knew that she was on the side of the Matron of Vengeance was in the other campaign, we have a skyship, and we had hired a crew for it. And she was part of the crew, but not the captain. and we saw her, and she had a amulet or totem of the Raven Queen attached to her belt. And she had presented herself as like very competent, obviously knew what she was doing. And, you know, I, being the curious person that I had, and like having Tim have this reveal in the other campaign, I was like, what brought you here? You're obviously overqualified for your position. And she's like, I lost my crew, so I have to work my way up again. And I was like, oh shit. We done that happened. And then so the druid in the other campaign that I play in was wearing the armor that Cordelia was wearing, which is a version of the Deathwalker's ward, which is what Vax wore in Critical Role. So that was found by our party in the Shadowfell when we were there. The druid had put it on, been like, this is some dope ass armor. And the Raven Queen wasn't like back at that point. So when the Raven Queen came back, the Raven Queen spoke to our druid and was basically like, will you be my champion? Will you follow a path of vengeance? And our druid was like, no. And
No, thank you.
no thanks. The armor physically ripped itself from her body, caused her like a lot of damage, and then it was gone. It like turned into a raven and then fucking left. And so my sense is what happened was because Cordelia had such a strong vengeance in her heart and so much hatred for us leaving and losing her crew. She was a new upstart captain. She probably had a really strong connection to this crew, that the Raven Queen was like, you want to be my champion? Or the Matron of Vengeance was like, you want to be my captain? And she was just like, hell yeah. And so that's where the Deathwalker's ward went. And now Cordelia is I'm assuming, a paladin of vengeance.
So interesting point about that. I would have loved to have seen, and I'm glad that we didn't get to see, what would have happened to Callie if Callie had not changed her oath.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like the ties that were coming out of her that Yana saw, they were all linked to people who felt it in sort of varying degrees of how much vengeance they felt. And had Callie gone into that, literally a paladin of vengeance, it would have been very interesting to see how that would have played out, because who knows if she would have been Callie would have found herself maybe again in a position where she was being controlled by someone else in the fight.
Yeah.
So
I even think
no, because you put the spell on her, but still, I mean, it would have been an interesting thing to have her be sworn to the exact ideal of the god you were fighting.
Well, there was also a moment too where Tim had me roll a wisdom saving throw for Neppy when she went shadow, because the amulet is tied, that Death Shadow is tied to the Raven Queen, and so was like,
Yeah,
if I
that
hadn't
could have been a real example of the plan not working out.
yeah, have your
That was one where those dice really came through for us.
because I had to banish her when I was in shadow form, and like had I not succeeded on that wisdom saving throw, stuff could have broke bad really quick.
But I would love to back up a little second and just
please.
illustrate our relationship to Cordelia. So we have to go to the Tomb of the Raven Queen, or just the Isle of Manta in the Forgotten Wastes, or whatever the hell. And so we hire a ship. And now I wasn't there for that session when we hired her.
It was numbers.
It was numbers, and we met who was the lovely sea monster ranger?
Terry.
Terry. We met Terry. It was wonderful. But the thing about Cordelia is she was constantly like, we're like, hey, we're going, correct me if I'm wrong, we're like, hey, we're going to this place. She said, that sounds great. Fucking great. You're the travel. It was dangerous, so she kept asking for more money, which we gave her.
We did.
You're like, yes, this is more dangerous. And then importantly, we passed sirens on the way. She lost one of her crew on the way. We were able to save another, whatever, but we passed sirens on the way. Once we got there, we were like, oh, fuck, Matron of Vengeance is out. The seal's broken. We got to biff it over to Bacall, which we did. And she got real pissed about that because she's like, no, you have to escort us back because these are dangerous waters. To which Letters said, oh, so you're paying us now? Like, no. That's not how this works. We paid you to get us someplace. You get us back. If she was unfit to go into these waters, she shouldn't have done it in the first place. And if she can't learn how to deal with sirens, what are you doing being a ship captain? It's not our fault. It's not our job to keep you safe. We're the client.
I believe the other thing was that we had originally just paid her to drop us off at the island.
Yeah.
So we had the original plan when we hired her was drive us to the island, drop us off, head out.
And then we offered her more money if she stayed.
to drive us back.
Yeah, we said, you
So
know
then
what,
we
just in case, if you hang out here for 3 days, like give us 3 days and then book it. Like we
so
just leave us there.
so the original plan that she was totally fine with was dropping us off and herself leaving. We then pay her to take us back. We realize that won't work and go, sorry, we have to go because the world's going to end.
But here's
And
your money that we
then,
were going to pay you to go back with
yeah,
anyway. Here's the 750 gold you wanted. Like, take it. That's fine. We've got to go.
She made a whole stink about it, and now she gonna done
Yeah.
make herself a paladin. Huh.
Yeah. I mean, I guess though vengeance doesn't really have vengeance is not objective. She
Mhm.
can't she doesn't see the objectiveness of that.
Oh yeah. All I'm saying is like Tim is like real good at being like, oh, morally gray people and whatnot. I'm like, I get you're pissed. Fucking, I washed my hands of you. I didn't like you to begin with. I didn't like it when we were theoretically on the same side. You were never one of Letter's favorites. And now you just have confirmed my initial thoughts about you, Madam Captain, Madam, with your little ghosty haunts who are very grabby.
Yeah.
Did not care for those gentlemen.
Surprisingly beefy for voidness. Yeah, that was a hard. I think it was
A lot of beef in the void.
yeah. I was wondering if the priestesses were real or that was just like an illusion.
You know, the Kenku.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I was bummed that like I couldn't make out faces or Neppy couldn't make out faces because she was looking for Wisha, who she would have known, which was the lead Kenku priestess from Philenis, who was likely there.
So, question: she takes off. She steals the gun and the seal. Are we concerned that the seal? I mean, obviously, we're concerned that the seal locks away Matron of Vengeance. Not great. We know that we need 3 seals to securely bind them. So, destroying the one will obviously weaken that considerably. Are we concerned that the seal is actually made of a piece of Arathis? And now she has a piece of Arathis? I mean, not ideal.
Yes, I mean, this is actionable and at the table, but Kokenee's gotta now go get that piece immediately. That is a chunk of his god.
Yeah. So new mission, like it's not like a we'll deal with this later. This is like a
no.
This is like a we need to go fix this now.
Yeah. Like number one problem, if she breaks it, there's not really an adequate quantity of seals at this point to keep the Matron of Vengeance.
Yeah.
But now there also is a person of vengeance carrying around a piece of my god.
So I want to talk a little bit about the seals and how they work. One is Neppy, made with the pieces of rock. I don't quite recall where those pieces of rock were from. They obviously have some sort of importance.
Yeah, so when this was I think in the episode is called A Comfortable Fortnight, but I forget what number it is. It was when we were in Dresda. It was just kind of right after the Battle of Bacall, and we were setting up temples. So Neppy gets a vision of this building in Dresda that is like, this is the building you're supposed to build Temple Ace and Onyx in. And inside the building, there's a giant gemstone, like a rock, in the center of it. And Neppy essentially like looked at the building and was like, okay, this is the place that you want. She climbed atop the stone, prayed to Nephthisiket, and Nephthisiket was like, here, this is the spot. And she was like, okay. So she took a couple pieces of the gemstone with her, and it's this giant gemstone that now sits in the middle of Temple Ace and Onyx. So my sense was like, if I need for a seal, it makes sense based on like everything else that we have learned about the seals that they need to be tied to your god in some way. So like the ring that Neppy wears, her wedding ring, is like that's her wedding ring. It's the High Priestess of Nephthisiset's wedding ring. It makes sense to have that be a seal that locks something away, which is now an item of a religious figure of Nephthisiset. And so I wanted to create something that is like, this is a piece of one of the temples that will be a binding agent. I have a name for it, but that's actionable and at the table of what it's called. and plans on what I want to do with it. But yeah, it's I needed something that was tied to Nephthys again. Like I think the key in that sits in Kokenee's chest was it sits in a piece of airlight. So like
And so then the second seal was the gun. But the third seal was something.
F?
the staff.
Was it the staff of the Sunmaker?
Yes.
Okay.
So I also have a clarification about what happened to the Sun Speaker. So I was curious about. So we saw the Sun Speaker essentially use his power word banish to call down this sunbeam and push the Matron of Vengeance into the tree and essentially like tether her to the tree so we could open the rift, and using his staff as the seal. And we then saw the matron, once she was at the tree, reach out, and so she killed the Sun Speaker. I was curious, and so I asked him. I was like, "Did the Sun Speaker have to give his soul? Because we saw his soul leave his body. Like, did he have to give his soul? Was his soul the seal, or was that the payment? Was that the cost? Like, Neppy had to give her magic, so did Kokenee. But what was the cost? Was it the Sun Speaker's soul?" And Tim said no. So the Sun Speaker was able to get off the power word banish, but after that, the matron cast power word kill on the Sun Speaker, and so he crumpled. And because of her abilities as a god, she was able to pull his soul out of his body. So that's what we saw. Was what happened to the Sun Speaker. But my sense is that it is his staff that is the seal, which we have. Yeah, which we have.
Something we probably got to watch out for is we just banished something to the negative energy plane. And traditionally when that happens, one of them Nightwalkers shows up, who are very bad boys. And if you banish those back to negative energy plane, this whole rigmarole starts again. So once we get the Walnut of Arathis, obviously, we will need to create some sort of Kokenee dungeon to house this Deathwalk. We're going to have to build a dungeon, presumably on Manta, lure the Deathwalker into it, seal that room where the Deathwalker is in, and then fill that dungeon with all sort of Kokenee traps so that no one can ever get to that thing again.
Or we just go ahead, Matt.
Big Kokenee again.
If it dies,
Kokenee.
does the Matron of Vengeance come back, or is it just if it's banished?
So you're gonna kill it. Just
so
kill
we could just kill it.
Oh, okay, Mr. No Fun.
Okay, I mean, fine. If Letters, I know Letters at some point is going to build a dungeon.
Yeah,
like
why
that's a guaranteed. You're right.
But you say going to. I mean, we don't know what he's doing underneath the Blackwater Bar and Grill.
This is so true.
There might be excavations for a dungeon there already.
I mean, Gilbert is already in my employ.
There's definitely excavations for a dungeon.
The excavations are ongoing.
Something that I love is that often in D&D you don't actually there's a gap period with wizards. There's the period where they're like low powered wizards, and then there's the period where they have a dungeon and maybe are a lich but are super powerful, and you never see the in between where they're just starting their foray into dungeon building and traps. And I'm excited that we get to see that. That's an excellent.
What I'm saying is, Matt, is you could be a part of it, because this is like my Letters dungeon. Like, that's Letters' business. That's between that's something. But this dungeon, this Deathwalker dungeon, concerns all of us.
Yeah, my other sense too is what might happen is an outpost might be set up to make sure other people don't come to the island. That to keep an eye. It's essentially keep an eye on the Nightwalker, not interact with it, but to keep an eye on it, and because that's essentially what was happening for 2,000 years before we got to Manta in the first place. That Nightwalker was just roaming the island.
Yeah, but nobody knew about it. Like, nobody knew about its significance. I'm saying there's at least one person, Cordelia, who does know about it and know its significance. Also, everyone in the council, we told them they know the significance. Yeah. Serpenthus, she knows the significance. And, loose lips sink ships. We don't know. I mean, who's that fucking Wendell? Wendell, fucking voice of reason, you think he's gonna keep that to himself?
I don't
He's
know.
probably gonna tell some fucking loved one because he's like, oh, you'll never believe what happened at work today. Then they'll tell their fucking hair stylist, and then then we have tourists wanting to see the Nightwalker. Now, if they come and what we're gonna have to create a large, elaborate false Nightwalker, some sort of, I'm thinking of being made of like winches and pulleys with a large, like dark bed sheet pulled over it, so that
Perfect.
people then banish that,
Right.
and then they're like, good, message done. And then if they figure out our series of clues and treasure hunts, then they find the entrance to the dungeon, and then they have to go through all that to finally banish. The purpose of the dungeon is to drain them of their spell slots, so that by the time they do get to the Nightwalker, they don't have any banishment left.
I wish we could just put the Nightwalker in the Tomb of the Raven Queen. Because
That's great. It's already there.
It's already there.
All we have to do is walk the Nightwalker through all the traps in the Tomb of the Raven Queen.
Casually.
Easy
peasy.
Just get Alora to put a little time bubble on Manta that won't be good for like 500 years. And then like in 500 years, whoever's around then, campaign 5,
yeah, it's their problem.
They'll worry about it.
Our children playing it.
No, your children's children.
Children's children. Yeah, I think, I mean, there's, obviously we'll see what happens with the fallout, because that's always what happens, right? There's a battle and then the fallout. So we saw the build up, we saw the preparations, we've seen the battle. I have titled the last episode, The Battle of Dawn and Dusk.
Yeah, I preferred we fight a god, I guess, as the title.
Thank
personally.
you so much.
But I see the poetic nature of the retitle.
Yeah. But we will now see what happens with the fallout, because we still have that teleportation crystal to get us out of there. I don't know if we can mansion there the evening, or if we want to. I don't know if Yana's burned through those spells. I wish that power word stun would have gone off. I fucking wish that power word stun would have gone off. That was such a clutch moment, and I was so happy that Yana used it when like it was so close. That was like, timing was correct, but 3 hit points, like, fuck.
Calculated risk, like,
totally.
There was nothing that she could have done that could have stopped Cordelia, because started Cordelia's turn, she would have bounced out of there.
Yeah.
So it was literally the only thing, short of maybe like a whole person or whatever, but like, it was a good call. I think Yana made the right call, and it just 3 points off.
Yeah. And like, I think sometimes there's like, I wonder sometimes, because I mean, I DM sometimes, but I don't DM a lot of like this kind of, I obviously don't DM this kind of D&D. I DM like stupid one shots and shit like that. But like, I always wonder too, it's like, what goes through a DM's head when that kind of stuff happens? Because I can imagine there's part like, with the DM who's like, oh, do I just let them do it? Like, that's 3 points away, or do you stick with the value as it is? And I think that, like, in my mind, it's like, whatever happens, and that's and like, we would have taken, if Tim had decided, I'm gonna let this happen for whatever reason, amazing. And if he's like, this doesn't happen, it's like, also amazing. That's like also great storytelling. But it's like, I wonder what goes through people's heads sometimes when they're in that position.
I think you guys used that sort of mechanic when you guys saved Clack in a sort of unorthodox way. That was his sort of like, all right, it works because, regardless of rules.
Sean, we got to talk about that.
It was beautiful.
Fucking one of the most beautiful moments I've ever seen.
That was to me, that was like, the winning of the fight wasn't the climax to me. To me, the climax of the fight was that moment, because after that moment, we lost the Sun Speaker. I mean, it's hard to feel emotionally attached to an NPC that was kind of standoffish in a lot of the encounters you guys had with him, and then also he follows Paylor, which is obviously is not great, but also just he hasn't been around that much. But to me, the climax of the fight was that moment. The moment that broke me, like where I started tearing up, was when Tim made the noise. Like everyone knew. Tim making that noise was like a dagger to my heart. I was like, bastard. Don't touch our boy.
So that wasn't. So after checking in with Tim about what happened with the Sun Speaker, I was like, oh, did she try and power word kill Clack? And he's like, no. So what happened was, also, I like another point of clarification too. We haven't looked if the brands are gone yet. We don't know
Yeah, I
if they're
thought
gone.
about that.
However, Clax is gone. Clax is gone. So the brand kind of burned through him and burned out. And there was something about that that caused his death. Like Clack was dead. He wasn't just unconscious. He was dead. So I asked Tim for a little bit of clarification as to what happened. I was like, okay, that like, so like letters went over and used, like, called something from himself to the ability to try lay on hands. And Cadmiel, who is the patron, who the actual name of the patron of his will, Dave, Finin's old patron and Cato's patron, has the power to resurrect. But I was talking to Tim, and he said it would not have been possible if not for what letters did. Without letters calling that from himself, with a little bit of help from Nephthisiket, it was apparently a joint effort between Nephthisiket and Paylor working together.
There you
Yes.
go.
So I was like, that's cool. That's a rejoining there, which was cool. But the resurrection and bringing him back, Cadmiel's ability to do that, would not have happened if not for what letters did.
I want to talk a little bit about Cadmiel. I'm a little bit confused as to what happened at the beginning of the fight.
Yeah.
When the Matron of Vengeance sort of called.
Yeah, I thought she like
Cadmiel.
got in his head or something.
Yeah, I was like, is
'Cause I was
Cadmiel
like-
working for her? Like, I was like, did he flip sides? Like, so what is Cadmiel's deal?
Okay.
Like, is he with Paylor? Is
Yes.
he on his own?
Before M gives the actual answer, it seems to me that fucking Paylor's got beef with the Raven Queen, and because Raven Queen's like, come on, motherfucker, here I am, let's do this. Cadmiel say, oh yeah, Duke's up, and so like.
So my sense.
To me, Cadmiel.
Go ahead.
Sorry, to me, Cadmiel feels like Thor in the sense that, like, he technically works for Odin, and Odin's technically the boss, but he just like does whatever the fuck he wants. And
Yes.
Paylor is like, yeah, you're my favorite angel. Just don't fuck it up too badly.
Exactly. So Cadmiel is a like higher, like a patron deity, an archangel, like a very high up celestial being who is technically under the purview of Paylor. But you're exactly right. To my understanding, he is a bit of a loose cannon. He's so powerful that he's kind of given his own domain to do what he wants, enacts his will on these, gifting powers to these, warlocks, like he did with Finin, and now as he does with Cato, that, he's so powerful. And as long as he's basically falling under the purview of Paylor, all is fine with the world. But I think what the matron was doing was she knew that she could goad Cadmiel into a fight because of Cadmiel's bravado, essentially, and his ego. So she could goad him into a fight, and if she was able to kill Cadmiel, she would have gotten Paylor. Paylor would have come down and been like, you killed my favorite, what are you doing? And that's what she was trying to do. So my sense is she was trying to get her claws into Cadmiel, but needed Cato to do that because essentially he's the vessel of Cadmiel.
Did we ever figure out how, like, if she had stabbed Cato with the knife, would that have then killed?
She was stabbing him with the knife.
No, but I mean, like, how would she have killed Cadmiel?
Stabbed him a few more times.
Yeah, they were essentially one being at that point. So Cato's body was the mortal vessel for Cadmiel. Cato was not Cato. He was both Cato and Cadmiel. He had Cadmiel's powers, but Cadmiel was driving the bus. But yeah, I also want to go back to, because we never actually heard from Sean. Tell us. I really want to hear about that moment for you.
I mean, like,
I know a lot of it's probably A&A, but like,
well, I mean, no, it's. I think what I said is fucking Letters thinks about what he's been thinking about for a while, because we have had this sort of ongoing thing with uh Letters' relationship to the nature of like his brand of wizardry, which like he is a like in the book his subclass is a war wizard. Like he was raised and is very proficient in like hurting people magically, and that doesn't necessarily work with him so much anymore. And but within like wizardry, there's no real way of there's no healy spells in you can't heal as a wizard. That's actually a really cool class limitation.
Yeah.
And when he had that conversation, I can't even remember when, with Callie, where it was, what is it like to, touch somebody and make them better?
it was
And
after
her
it was in Dresda, I think. It was like after one of the battles of Bakal, or it was after the fight in the Earth Elemental plane with Baba
yeah,
and Melek and Zamrod. I think both of them.
yes.
Yeah.
And her explanation was just so simple. It was like, I just focus on the love. And just just the simplicity in the way that Callie described it. There's just a certain level of envy of Letters on that point. So when Clack went down, whenever someone goes down, Letters is like, my job is elsewhere. I need to do something else. But there is like the only people near Clack was me and Yana, the two wizards who like can't do it. So it's like it's me, and I've just got to try it. Like if I've seen people be brought back enough. I don't like because I was like, do I make a medicine check? It's like, no, Letters has like a -1 to medicine. Like there's like Letters can't take stock of how Clack is doing. So I was like, I've heard of this thing. I guess I'll try it, and it seems simple enough. You take a swing at it. It was kind of.
Well, I don't want to get too much into things that are yet again actionable and at the table, but Letters' hesitance to really foray into this is his, at least from my point of view, is his sort of great love of his independence and freedom, and it's like it's a sort of a continuous trait throughout all of his decisions. Is he doesn't like to be beholden to anything, and obviously that we know where that comes from in his background and everything, but I felt like a lot of the resistance for making that decision earlier was sort of like I would essentially be beholden to this god. Whether or not the god would ask me to do things that I disagree with is not the point. The point is I don't like to be beholden to anyone. And now you went to her in this moment of need, and she gave you this ability to do this without like. I mean, I feel like you're going to tell me you can't tell me, but is this something that concerns Letters, that he has now essentially been given something in which there might be an expectation of a return?
Well, I'd counter. Letters didn't go to her. She showed up, but
yes,
at like when Letters did that, there was no prayer to anybody. It was just him and Clack. So Letters is gonna have to sort through some stuff. Like we'll see where the chips fall, and like there's a whole lot of things that it's like, well, we don't know what this means, and that's kind of my answer, is that the matron showed up. No, not the matron. Excuse me. Nephthisiket showed up unannounced, and so that may color his relationship with an authority figure. But again, we'll just have to see how that goes.
So, not anything that could be actionable at the table, which is why it's a great time to ask here. How do you feel about it, Sean?
How do I feel about it?
Yeah, about that sort of series of things that happened last night. That piece of it.
I'll tell actually on the topic of what Yanis is talking about, like the nature of it happening by the grace of gods is something that has left me, Sean Deppner, who has time to process this. I like when Letters realistically has time to process this. I don't. That leaves Letters in a uncomfortable philosophical position, and that is the position that I am in right now in terms of thinking it out. In terms of if, like, I feel really great about the actual process of the thing in terms of like the growth of the character, and like if ever, because we're like messing around with, I talked to the not the matron, talking to Fiska, like, am I gonna be a paladin? And she's like, here's the rule. He's like, I don't play by those rules. And so there's very much in my mind where I was like, okay, like, multi-class paladin would be cool for a number of reasons, and both mechanical and narrative, but it seems like with just the way the class is structured, it's probably not in the cards for Letters. And also just by virtue of like, what do you get as a first level paladin? You get lay on hands, and like that's kind of it. And so like that kind of all coming together at a time when I was like, okay, that was just an idea that we had that like just isn't realistic. And now like the actual what happened there, great, beautiful, we love it. What is it like? It basically is like, you saved your friend, here's an existential crisis, like, who are you, what do you care about, like what actually matters to you.
And that's kind of what I meant, where it was like,
yeah.
I very much felt like Letters was not going to go down that road based on the interactions that he'd had with Nipthisicat, and now it's sort of like a, you kind of are already down that road, even though you might not.
Yeah, let me tell you, Matt, I'm experiencing a whole lot of bleed, because while Sean Deppner is not the like fervent freedom at all costs that Letters is, I have certainly spent enough time really pondering the merits, and like given his backstory, like it's also clear to me, why that is, like, you absolutely nailed it, Yanis. Like that is his number one thing, is I don't want to be beholden to anybody. Like even down to the fact that Clack is not his sidekick, they are each other's mutual sidekick. Like Letters has such a disdain for any kind of hierarchy. Really, he's a weird capitalist anarchist, if I think about it.
I love it.
But that's not relevant to what we're talking about right now. So it's just like, and Sean Deppner loves philosophy, and like what happens when these two things rub up. So I feel thoroughly and frustratingly engaged by this chain of events.
One more thing before we leave that topic, and I know we're running out of time on our recap thing.
Oh yeah,
here, but
it's our show. We can take as much time as we want.
It's M's show.
It's not my show. There's no hierarchy
here. Who are
here.
we beholding to?
But for me, and I might be reading this wrong, Sean, but for me, like, I've known you for a while, and I know how you generally interact emotionally. There's very few times that I see you as Sean Deppner break and sort of become emotional. You play it very well, and so like, a lot of times when you see it, it's you're playing a character or you're playing Letters. But one thing that really struck me about the episode was I could feel you as Sean deal with that sort of death of Clack. And I think that hit me, it made it more emotional for me, because I knew that it was like, it wasn't bleed from Letters to Sean. It was very much like a bleed from both sides.
Oh,
like
100%.
You were lamenting as Sean, you were lamenting the death of Clack, not just as Letters.
Well, I'll tell you, that's 100% true, because Sean Deppner loves Clack, as I'm sure we all do, and Letters obviously does. But like earlier that day of that session, I had written Letters's like in-universe will, which was left with Tad. And in that will, there was like, here's what happens if I die. And Clack was a major beneficiary of that will. And it's like, here's what happens if Clack dies. Because there was a reality of like a total party wipe. There was no reality that Letters envisioned in which Clack went down and Letters didn't. So like in terms of like the emotional place that I was in that day after like quite, going through a few different drafts of this will and really trying to think out and, really thinking about Letters' estate, as it were. Like when that hand was going through, it was like, all right, which one of us is it going to be? Is it going to be Callie? Is it going to be Yana? I like the fact that she would go for fucking like what you're right when he did the little like it was like it was such a blindsiding that made such perfect sense.
Yeah.
And it was just like how were we not prepared for this? Yeah, so I felt extremely unprepared for that eventuality, which came all the more shocking because I felt like I had prepared for every eventuality. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice way to put it, Sean, is that you can prepare for every eventuality that you see, and there will still be some that you don't see. Like we didn't see Cordelia being there, and once we were there, we didn't see her taking one of the seals. Right? We didn't anticipate that, and nor could we have. Like that's not something that you can necessarily. But it's like, and now that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And I think Matt's absolutely right. Like it takes when things like that happen, like we are still in that midst of being pulled in so many directions. Like we still have to take the Sunspeak. The Sunspeaker has now been taken home to Paylor, and we still have Cato with us, who is like he's not unconscious, but he's out for the
Yeah.
count, and like we will need a rest. And it's like we got to take that boy home, and he's alive now, and also doesn't know that we haven't brought his father back yet. So we have to deal with that. And then there's the, like emotional recourse of what has happened with Cordelia taking the seal, and Kokenee is obviously reeling from that. The party is reeling from everything, wanting to support their friend. And again, it's just like we're pulled and we go.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were talking about this a little bit before. A mixed success.
Mixed success.
I
What-
would say more success than
let me one more thing, Yanis, that I just realized that is actually so rare in D&D in terms of like the immediacy of that moment. Just one thing that occurs in terms of like, these things happening, not predicting, is just the initiative roll is usually so good for when things happen. It allows you, the player, to like react to it a bit and think about what you want to do. By virtue of just the randomness of like the Matron of Vengeance rolled higher than me, and I was the highest member in the party to roll that high, where it was like, this happened. Letters, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh no. Usually I get like 5 in real time minutes to deal with something as someone like looks at their spells and counts damage. It was just like, what do you want to do? And I was like, like, so that's one more reason that moment was so emotionally charged, because I am in real time processing what's happening while trying to fix it, very much in the same way that Letters has. Because I think when we're playing and something big happens, some character goes down or someone's loved one goes down, and the character, it just happened 6 seconds ago, but it's been 5 minutes for us, and so we try to put ourselves in that moment where it just happened. I've never had it before where it was like, this has literally happened and now you have to react to it. That it's only occurring to me now is kind of a real first as far as my whole D&D career. And I pass the conch to Yanis. Thank you.
No, I think that in terms of the scale of success versus failure, it was definitely leaning more towards the success side than it was towards the failure. You guys keep calling it a mixed success, but you guys were 100% successful in the goal that you set out to accomplish. there are now new complications, but that is sort of just generally how D&D works.
Let me
Um,
let me bounce you back. I've been really thinking about want versus need recently. It's like in story, characters are always after a want, but what they really need is something else. Our goal was to seal the thing away and, you know, make everything hunky-dory. You know, on paper, we achieved all our goals, which is our
Yes.
want. But I think what the party really needed was a break.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it was like, why do we want to seal all this away? It's so that
We can
fucking
stop.
Kokenee can spend time with his wife and like and all of that. And so in one way, we got what we wanted, but what we
Not what we
need
needed.
still eludes us.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why, because you're absolutely right, Yanis, we achieved all the goals we set out with, like, I think less losses than we expected.
On paper, a more practical success than we
Yeah.
anticipated.
But
I mean,
but in terms
it'll-
of emotionally,
Yes.
It'll also be very dependent on whether or not the scars or the tattoos on your guys' back are gone.
Yes.
I
Because
mean,
if they're not gone, then then I would give you very much a mixed success,
I-
because then you are very much still at her
So
view if she was to ever come back.
So I actually am not enormously worried about whether or not the scars are there,
ditto.
because if they are, we did our deal.
And she
If
has
they
not
are,
upheld her end of the bargain.
She has not upheld her end, and if that has consequences for us, that would have had consequences for us regardless.
That's fair.
So I'm not like, whether or not those scars exist on him, you know, my character's back, like I'm not enormously worried. If the Matron of Vengeance comes back and does vengeance on us, she probably is doing as such with or without those scars being there.
It's true.
And if
Also,
if
oh yeah, you go, man.
it's like, instead of her having won over on us in the cosmic scale of things, you know, granted she's a god, but her bond, like when she visited Neppy, she said,
Mhm.
"You deliver him, the brands will be gone. That is my bond." And she has, if those scars are still there, she has. So the cosmic tables of bond,
Mhm.
the rules have shifted a bit, because if she hasn't upheld that, then we may have a little bit of leverage against a fucking god,
Mhm.
which is not something we had before.
Yeah.
And she can only get vengeance if she gets out. So we'll just keep her, we'll keep her bottled
Yeah.
up, and we'll not have to worry about it ever.
She can only get vengeance if she gets out, and if she gets out, she's having vengeance regardless.
Yeah.
And if she wreaks vengeance, like the concern with the scars, with the brands, is that happens and the outcome sort of is like, well, we deserved that because we broke the bond. If that happens now, it is no longer that.
Yeah.
We're talking about like mixed success versus success. I think Sean is totally right that what we were looking for was a little bit of a break. And like, I can tell you that for me as a player, like,
Yeah.
I feel so much closer to mixed than to success. Like, Matt, am so sad about how that happened. I turned off the stream and put headphones on and put on a YouTube video and went to bed. And was like still am deeply sad about like the one thing that my God gave me, losing it.
Yeah.
Like that's so much bleed for me right now. Yeah. So it's very, I feel almost, you know, it's nice that the Raven Queen's gone, but I feel very little success at the moment.
Maybe I'll think twice about getting a poison resist belt next time, huh?
I think
I think that was too mean. I'm sorry. I think that was too soon. I'm sorry.
I will live and die in this game by the aesthetic. That doesn't change. That doesn't change the plan there. But
I think there was, I think within the party, to go off of what you were saying, Matt, and thank you for sharing. So, the sense of how close we are to success versus mixed will also vary within the party. You know, if we're on a spectrum of where mixed is here and success is here, Kokenee sits quite firmly, probably more on the mixed side. Neppy would sit quite close to that, seeing the pain of her husband and knowing the reverence of like having a piece of your god and feeling separated from that. And I can imagine the rest of the party is somewhere in between, because they're also, while it is a seal of the matron that is locking away the Matron of Vengeance, yes, they're also reeling in the pain of their friend, like watching Kokenee process this in time, which is what we were doing last night at the end of session. And so I think that between the party, we're going to see varying levels of push towards going and doing. I think we're all going to go. Obviously, we're going to go and get the seal back, but the emotionality around it is different, as it is for everyone, right? Like if the closer you are to the thing that has occurred, the more intensely it happens for you, and thus the more intense the bleed is. Which I think is such an interesting and curious part of role play, is how we can reel emotionally for our characters. Like at the end of the night, when you left last night, Matt, I was like, oh my gosh, like I saw the bleed and I was like, I feel that for you. And like it's intense, because I've had moments of huge bleed for Neppy, and it's a constant renegotiation between player and character, which is like the line of the alibi. You're constantly renegotiating, like, where am I, where is Neppy, how much do we overlap, and where does that shift happen, and time and processing. So I think your point too, Sean, about like you're having to process in real time as Letters is processing in real time, also contributes to bleed too.
I mean, the message in the Facebook group of everyone like telling each other how much they loved each other at the end of the session made me terrified to watch it, because I woke up and I opened the messages and it was like, I love you so much, thank you for the session, and I was like, fucking shit went down. Like I knew shit would go down, but like when the debrief spills out of the Zoom and into the chat, that's when I'm like, fuck, what am I getting into? Like it's gonna be rough. And then the fight went so well for the first part of it. I was like, how is this going to end? Like, what is going to happen? And yeah, it was. I could definitely see how that would hit you guys.
Oh, I'm so curious to see the fallout of what happens next week. But that actually seems like a pretty good note. We are well over our half an hour time that we had set for ourselves, as we expected. So I am gonna roll that intro, and we'll do some announcements, and then let's dive into the Elemental Chaos arc. All right, let me find where is my mouse here? And intro! And we're back.
We're back.
We're back.
We are back. We are back. Sean, are you ready for your art along?
Yeah. Yes. I know. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
I will.
No. Oh God. Why don't I think about this in advance?
I'll amble through announcements so you can figure it out. A big thank you to our sponsors, Legendcraft, a nerdy woodworking company from Calgary, and Silverwing Armory, selling paper products for all your RPG gaming needs. Check them out, and if something tickles your fancy, enter the code Blackwater at checkout for a discount. Love, as always, to our dice goddess, Keisha. Check her out at fairydragon_dice. Her commissions are open, so DM her for all your clickety-clackety needs. She is a real just like unfathomable artist in that realm, so please go get yourself some dice from her.
She's unfathomable. She has like a real like old gods Cthulhu-esque energy. Like
absolutely.
You can't look her straight in the eye without like
going a little bit crazy.
But it'll be the last person you ever look.
You might get some things you didn't anticipate. Love, as always, to our campaign artist Tiana. You can find her at miss._Marston on Instagram, and all of our official art for this campaign and beyond is done by her because we love her. So you should get art done by her too. Her commissions are open. She has very limited spots per month, so go get in there. Our Discord is a wonderful and a beautiful and amazing place. So type !Discord in the chat and come hang out while we're streaming. Hang out here with us in Twitch chat because that's where all the cool kids are. The final round of the Gravelies are open, so please go and vote on those nominations. We have like the Gravelies will be happening on March 17th. It is a Wednesday. It is our 1-year awards show. Do we know how it's going to be structured? I'm still thinking about it, but we need your help voting. So please come hang out and vote with us over the next week or so. You will find it all in the Discord. It'll take you to a Google form that's very secret, and it'll be great. A big thank you to the folks who subscribe to us. Don't forget to re-up your subscriptions as they don't roll over every month. We also have a coffee, so if you would like to support our show above and beyond your subscription, type !Donate in the chat to head on over. We're also just so thankful to have you here. We had one of our biggest streams ever on Saturday night with this episode, other than the charity stream we've done. So like, it's so cool to know that you folks want to be here and want to hang out with us and are supporting us in this way. And as I said on Saturday, like being present with us in this like beautiful emotional space that we play in, and making it feel really safe for us to do so. So thank you, because I know not all communities are like that. So appreciate y'all very much, and for bringing other friends and stuff to the show. It's great. You want to know what else is great? Lore Club. We love lore,
Yeah.
and that's why you're here, because you love lore too. Do you want to get involved in chronicling our campaign from the beginning? You do? Wonderful. Well, there's a way for you to do that. Type !Lore in the chat, and it will take you to a Google form set up by our amazing mod, the New Experience Network. And it will get you in contact with him to join in the fun. There are spreadsheets, there are documents, there's a cookbook that has been started.
Hell yeah.
It's a delight. There's also a lore section in our Discord, and a lore elf on the shelf chat where all of the people from Lore Club hang out and talk about the documents that they've made, which really warms the deep, dark parts of my heart. Our programming this week on Wednesday, the lads are back with Behind the Screen, talking all things DMing. We are taking live questions from the chat, so please come submit those. We kind of just start on a topic and we see where it goes. So please come hang out. That will be at 8 p.m. on Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time, as always. And then, of course, we are back on Saturday for our main campaign as you see what happens with our sweet characters in Manta. As well, in about just under 2.5 weeks, we will be welcoming the Chronicles of Wagadu to Blackwater D&D. So on Wednesday, March 24th at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you will get to see Alan Cudicio, the creator of the Wagadu Chronicles, in a brand new one-shot set in the Wagadu universe, with myself as a player, TJ Storm, B. Dave Walters, Alicia Marie, and Brianna DeCoster of Utahime Cosplay. It's going to be bananas. So please come hang out with us. It will be such an amazing show, and we're so thankful to be hosting Alan and his graciousness for coming to host a one-shot on our channel. So lastly, if you're new with us tonight, or if you've been with us for ages, thank you for your support. We love you all a lot. Sean's shaking his head because he knows I'm almost done announcements.
No, I figured it out. I'm just not proud of it.
And we hope you feel really welcome here. Sean, what do you have for us? What do you have in your heart
Okay.
and lung?
Again, anyone can do art. It doesn't have to be good. And I would like to submit my depiction of Callie being grabbed by that Gooby, being grabbed by the fist.
That's really good.
The fist. That's the Gooby. It's saying rawr, rawr, rawr.
That's really
Good
good.
And this
fist.
is
It's a good
Callie.
fist.
We've got
Callie-
wings, her little pony,
She's
her
mad.
sword.
Callie's not as great, but the fist is good.
The fist is. I started with the fist and realized I did not have enough room or time to redo it.
That's pretty good.
I was gonna start with the tragedy of the chain breaking, but I got really involved in the size of the chain, and once again realized I did. You ever hear John Mulaney's bit about writing
Yes.
a happy birthday
Yes,
card,
it's
where we
so
always
good.
overestimate how much space we have?
But the best part about that whole bit is the truth to how you start with the happy and then you run out of space for the why, and then when you start the birthday, you resume the same confidence that you started with the happy, having learned nothing, and do the exact same thing again. And it's so true.
I experientially process that stand-up every time I commit to this dumb art-along bit that I've created. As I go,
I
oh
love it.
no, oh no.
I love
But that's what
it.
I did for everyone at home.
So we are going to jump into the last little bit of the Elemental Chaos arc. So if you missed us last time, that was part 6. So in the last episode, we got through 4 episodes of lore because we're amazing. We saw us leaving Falwe Tavar and having the ambush on the road with Kiva Flinthand. We see our first trip to the Earth elemental plane, where Callie and Kamea share a moment. We rescue Kreger for the first time, or we rescue Kreger, meeting our first Petch, and Neppy and Kokenee share a really beautiful, intense moment around Kokenee's Bible, and the implications of that. And then we get to Wolfreen. We fight our way through the city, and we end up at the docks. By battling the Triton, Delna's Deep Run, freeing a dragon turtle, and going towards the Temple of Cord, where we have holed up for the night. We also see Neppy and Kokenee have their first kiss on the roof, and Neppy starts teaching Kokenee Infernal so that he can translate the letter she has written for him.
We just got caught up to speed, Matt. That was just the review. I know we talked about it last week, but I
Yes.
cannot wait for us to call in the solid that dragon turtle owes us at some point in the future, and everybody, all the chatties, which is I guess what our fucking chatwater followers
The
are called, will be
chatties.
like, "Oh, I get that cut," and we'll be like, "Yeah,
And
it was only for you."
nobody else will understand Davin the dragon turtle.
They'll be
And
like, where the hell did this turtle come from?
yeah, they're like, why does Neppy know a turtle? Like, why does
Yeah.
Neppy know a turtle?
Come swim in the waters of chatwater. It's always inviting.
It's always
Dive in
balmy
the
and
deep end.
delightful.
So, but yeah, what happened next?
So we are starting at episode 23, session 23, which is the Battle of Gatestone Keep, happening April 21st, 2019. Matt, would you like to take it away, or do you want me to start?
Why don't you lead? I'll catch up.
Okay, sounds good. So, in the morning, Kokenee and Neppy come down from the roof, and everyone is waiting in the main lobby of the Temple of Cord, and we begin the day with preparations for battle. We utilize a bottle of Hero's Feast potion that we had, which was a Caraxian brandy, which is actually a little bit of a throwback to our session last night, where people were like, Neppy, do you have a Hero's Feast? And I was like, nope, because this is just port, not brandy. So we only had 4 servings of the Hero's Feast, and they were given to Callie, Kokenee, Spooky, and Kamea. And Neppy gives Yana Death Ward, and gives Callie, because Callie can also cast Revivify at this point, diamonds. Callie and Kamea kind of duck off to the side. Callie's like, I need you to be okay at the end of the day. You need to be all right, because whatever's happening here is good, and I don't want that to stop, so you need to be okay at the end of today, and that they'll figure what happening when the dust clears. We also find Hector Turnbuckle, who we had known from our dealings back in Svel N a time before. He is now back in the city. He's injured, but recuperating. So we talk to him, and he gives us a brief lay of the land. So we learned that Hector has actually been a spy for Queen Thealia, and now that the queen is dead, he is now back here in the city and is basically said, okay, this is what's happening. This is where you can go. This is your way through the city to get to the Gatestone Keep so that you can go get Zacchus. There's a lot of praying that happens at this point. Typical. This is where it starts, that we're all starting to pray very early. Callie prays to Melora. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I just love that. It's just cool because sometimes big sessions sneak up on you. But I really do like when the characters are like, fuck, we might not make it through this. And like, I mean, we didn't even, I'm not going to go into it now, but just like, we didn't even talk about the first half of the session when everyone was just putting their affairs in order. But anyways, Callie, I just liked that. Because it's so fucking real.
It was so funny in the chat. Like, I know you brought up the word will, Sean, when we were talking about it before the intro. But we never said the word will. in the
Mhm.
first half of the session, but the chat, like I went back through and was just skimming to like skim through the episode this morning, and the chat was like, are they writing their wills? Are they getting their stuff in order? Are we watching our party walk into a TPK? And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah. Yana leaving that note in her bedroom. Like, yeah. That's, I mean, I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to Jen, but that's for sure a will.
oh yeah,
Or something to that effect.
yeah. I think we've all got them. Callie's got one. I know Neppy has some, and I know Kokenee has one. And like that conversation has been happened. So yeah, so all of us getting our affairs in order. Anyway, so we talk to our gods to get our affairs in order. Callie prays to Melora, Neppy prays to Nipthysket, and Kokenee prays to Arathis. He rolls a natural 20 on his religion
Hell
check,
yeah, dude.
and his gun starts glowing with golden runes that had never
So
glowed
religious.
before. So religious. But this was at the point where you weren't even proficient in religion.
No.
Like you were the cleric who was not proficient in religion. So we're standing basically ready to go, and Spooky asks for our attention. And she says that she's really sorry for running away in Fawe Tavar and letting her fear get the best of her in front of the thorn gauges. And she tells us that she's not going to run anymore, that she's got us our back 100%, and she's, regardless of what happens, that she's never going to run again. So we rally around her, and we go outside.
She seems great, but anytime you guys need to get away in a hurry, she refuses. She just walks, and everyone's like, guys, we got time crunch. And she's like, no, I said no more running.
Walking away.
I hate running. Speed walk, max speed.
That's why we got her Fezzik, so you could fly her around.
Exactly. It just took too long to get anywhere.
So we walk outside, and we had heard from that Torren was making his way through the city, and so we're waiting for him to arrive. So Neppy and Kokenee share this moment again before battle. Kokenee comes up and tightens the straps on her armor, and he asks her to be safe for the day. He's like, please be safe. That he needs her to be standing at the end of the day, and she's like, I need the same of you. I need that. You need to be okay at the end of the day. And they talk about Torren and how that it's also their job now to keep him safe. And Kokenee says, I'll look after him. And Neppy's like, I'll look after the rest. I will look after you and the rest. So I think it's a nice moment for them of being like, okay, we are starting, so there is something burgeoning here, but we know that there is something bigger, and we need that all to be okay, so that we can attempt to figure out what this is at some point when that happens. Matt, did you want to take it from here?
Yeah. Why don't you just go a little bit further?
Sure.
I'm just pulling. Yeah.
Got it.
I am looking through my emails.
So at that
to pull up yours, not
absolutely
checking your emails.
No problem. So at that moment, we hear a bunch of voices and shouting from outside, and they're like, we hear the acolytes of Cord calling that the townspeople are here. The townspeople are here. So we go outside the Temple of Cord, and we see that the townspeople of Wolfreen have risen up and are attempting to fight the elementals that have taken over their city. There's the Sawagan, the water, the earth, and the fire elementals. And for we watch the townspeople kind of fight their way towards the temple from afar. For every one that falls, another 5 or so tend to take up the cause as they're pushing their way through the city. And at the front of the crowd, we see a human man push his way through, scaling an earth elemental and just basically 1, 2, 3 punching the shit out of it, and it cracks. And so we see
That's gotta be Torren. That's gotta be Torren.
we see him
Famed puncher.
We see him wearing light silver scaled armor, a fur-lined cloak with the image of a wolf painted onto the dark green fabric, and he's wearing a helmet with the cog of Arathis on the front. And yes, it is Torren, and here he is with reinforcements. It's a wonderful reunion because we hadn't seen him in a day or two in game time, and this is him as we've never seen him before. We've seen Torren, who has been not necessarily a broken man, but a man out of place, a man who is a man out of time, and now we're seeing him where he should be, leading a group of people into battle as a soldier. So he assures us that Jar is safe with Nissa and will be arriving in the city within the next day or two, hopefully after everything is settled. Neppy gives Torren back his spear, which she had been holding, and he gives Neppy the bag of holding, which he had been traveling or holding for her. And as we do, she casts freedom of movement on him. Is like, I won't have you held down by anything today. You go and you fucking kick ass today. Neva is with us and she departs. She's taking Andaz Silmak, the councilman, and makes their way through the city. And then it's at this point that we watch Torren scale up onto one of the pillars of the Temple of Cord on kind of like a platform. And he makes this beautiful, empowering speech to the citizens of Wolfrane, encouraging them to take back their city. And while he's doing this, he gets a vision of his family leaving Caradoc at the tail end of the Dawn War. It's probably the last time he saw them before the city fell. And of course, now we have reason to believe that they headed north to Garyang, potentially to Telekov, but obviously we didn't know that at the time. And with that, we start making our way towards the Gatestone Keep. The townspeople army are headed off one way to try and rid the city of the elementals, and we are going to go take care of Zakis, who we
Boss
know
battle time.
is boss battle time. Matt, did you find the email? You got it?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good.
So Kamea helps us break through a wind wall barrier that had been built around the city, assumedly by Zakis, the city center. And we find ourselves almost in the eye of the storm.
That giant storm that had been like swirling overhead.
I forgot about that storm. Yeah.
And we know that we're seconds away from the Gatestone. And Torren quickly pulls Neppy aside and asks her to promise that she won't bring him back to life if he falls.
Let's dial in on that moment.
Yeah.
Because that feels, I know that's significant because it's come up in stream. Em, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this was actually something that happened outside of session. So this happened the night before the night we played D&D. Adam talked to me and he's like, Torren's got to talk to Neppy. And I was like, pardon? He was like, Torren's got to talk to Neppy. I was like, okay, so we're going to do this right now. I think I was over at Adam's house playing Dungeons and Dragons with his mom and dad. And a bunch of us, which was very fun. I think Sean, you were there. And
I remember it.
Matt, I think you were there.
I was there,
too.
yeah.
Yeah. So that night,
the cleric with the hand. Yeah.
Yes.
Go on.
Fair, yeah.
So just before I left that night, I was just like helping him clean up. He's like, Torren's got to talk to Neppy, and I was like, okay, I guess we're doing this here. And he was basically like, don't bring me back. I'm not the choice. If I fall, it's been 2,000 years since I've seen my family, and I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. I want you, if it comes to it, to let me go. If it's a choice, let me go. And Neppy's like, no, like, what are you talking about? Like, it's going to be fine. I'm going to look out for you. We have everything. It's going to be okay. He barely gives her a chance to respond before he just like is off. So he lays this on her and she's like, no, like, I'm going to keep my friends safe. So that's what Neppy was dealing with going into the fight. That's the thing that's on her shoulders as she walks into this battle, knowing that there is a potential that she may have to make a big decision about what happens with her friend. And that was really hard. I was driving home from Adam's house and was like reeling from that decision, being like, we're going to actually play this game tomorrow night and I may have to make that decision. Me, Emma, as Neppy, is going to have to make that decision. And I think that's, and as we'll see in a couple moments, that's a decision that Neppy still carries. 100%. Okay, go ahead, Matt. Keep going.
So after that conversation, Torren breaks off into a run towards the potential fight. We break right into the battle as Zakis has destroyed the city center with his storm and blown the front right off of Gatestone Keep. There are 4 tall pillars that pulse with power, each with a shard of a gem atop. There's a white gem, a blue gem, a red gem, and a brown gem.
One for each of the 4 elements.
Yeah. Who have Titans that we all remember the names of now. They're
No, we don't need to.
we don't need to. We just all know as a group that we all know them now. For a
I was so
specific
perking
reason.
up for a pop quiz because I
No.
studied that one.
No.
There are fire salamanders, fire elementals, earth elementals, air elementals, and myrmidon, and stuff pops off.
Oh yeah.
It just the fight just like boom just starts. It's like Tim's like, you walk in and let's all roll initiative, and we're like, we were all so nervous. There were so many snacks on my floor. We were all just like on top. We were just like all piled into different corners of my living room. Like Lennon was in my lap for some of it. Like it was a wild fight.
This would have been the first boss fight of
Yeah.
the party. Like, you know,
First-
you fought big things before, but this is like a proper. Everything's been leading up to this boss fight.
Yeah.
Neppy thinks this is her prophecy.
Yeah.
This is the boss fight. Yeah, big snack time.
Big
Keep
snack
trucking.
time.
We'd fought like big things before.
Mhm.
Like we had fought the dragon in Caradoc,
The
so we'd
giants
fought,
in the earth elemental plane. Like big
but this
fights.
was the first one that was both a tremendously difficult fight and deeply like sort of story build up at the same time.
A lot of narrative and mechanics were kissing. Big, heavy BBEG fight, and also like Tim has been laying the groundwork of this campaign for a year. We had been reeling up to this boss fight for a year. So, okay, keep going.
So we kill a bunch of the smaller elementals. However, Zacchus is able to complete the ritual he was working on, and the ground around the fountain cracks and tears apart with a monstrosity pulling away the fabric of the plains. 30 feet tall and wide, the center of swirling black energy surrounded by fire, wind, earth, and water. It is this giant, monstrous elemental thing.
I'm going to go get the mini. Matt, keep going. I'm going to go get the mini.
Kokenee and Callie began to target Zacchus, while Neppy, Torren, and Kamea take on the Chaos Elemental. Yana gets herself up on a building to try to get better vantage points, but comes across Syndral Doomwing.
That's a Dragonborn. Big bad Dragonborn.
It is the Dragonborn Ranger, the final agent of Zacchus we'd yet to come across. And they go toe-to-toe on the rooftop.
Just the two of them. I do. Are you ready to see the Chaos Elemental?
Yes.
And it's like, it's wild too, because Tim bought this mini while we were out at a store, and he was like, you need to go outside. He like saw it. He was like in one corner of the store. He's like, you need to go outside. I have to buy something. I was like, what? He's like, don't ask questions. You just need to go outside. I was like, okay. And so he goes outside. He has a bag, and he's like, and I was like, what did you buy? And he's like, I can't tell you. I was like, there's like people. There's like little like shadowy people and swords inside this mini. It's ginormous compared to like a regular mini. It's awesome. I love this. My daughter calls this the Kraken, and she really enjoys playing with this. This one I think is it might be like a WizKids mini. Yeah, well, it's not so mini. It's huge. It's one of the biggest ones we have. Okay, keep going.
So the group on the ground gets caught in a storm sphere as we keep fighting, and we realize we need to knock out the pillars that surround Zacchus that seem to be allowing the Chaos Elemental to be stable here on the material plane. So we basically realize that the 4 towers are running a summoning spell to lift up this creature. So Kokenee with his gun trains his gun on the shards and fires, getting the first 3 down. Every time he removes a shard and pillar, one of the limbs of the Chaos Elemental destabilizes. So we're seeing it
go ahead, man. Yeah, so it's
we're
like
seeing it come apart.
He's like firing at the like water shard, and the like water limb is just like starting to like get really volatile. So it's like it's very clear to us that this being is super unstable. Like it should not be conglommed together, and it should not be stable. And I think this was one of the first big homebrew things that Tim did, like a huge homebrew. Like he has the stats sheet of it originally somewhere, and it's like this beautiful. He saw a picture of it and he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna stat that out." Like so, he just like did it. It was wild. There was like some all of the elements had different attacks, and it was so hard. It was just big swirling energy. It was very, very hard.
Maybe he'll think about posting it in the Discord sometime.
Yes.
Who knows?
Yes.
So Yana then is fighting on top of the rooftop with, what's their name, Sean and Yanis?
Syndril
Doomwing.
Doomwing,
That's right.
the Dragonborn Ranger
Very good.
from Cinderfall,
That is correct.
home of Garrett's twin larynx screaming in my
Thank
Bugatti.
So as Yana is up on the rooftop with them, she gets shot by a ballista that Syndra fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Yana's so small.
Yeah,
Ballista's so big.
It launches her off of the building that she is standing on, and in that
Hilarious.
moment, Syndril jumps down and tries to escape. At this point, Spooky manages to kill her with Toll the Dead.
So Spooky, with a giant ballista in her shoulder, almost pinned to the ground, reaches out and casts Toll the Dead and just rocks Syndril, and Syndril just falls down dead. It was spooky. Yeah, it was wild. Yeah. It was...
Did someone have to help her down? Like, was she like feet dangling, pinned against the? Oh, she's against the ground.
She got pinned, essentially almost pinned to the ground. Like she's like down carrying the weight of this ballista in her shoulder. Yeah, it's.
And I remember when we're fighting at this point, Tim's got like all of his minis set up, and he's got like the building and the little ballista mini, and Jen's accidentally moved her character like in front of it, but didn't really think of it as
right
being
in front of the ballista.
Didn't think of the ballista as being like a usable thing in the fight. And Tim's like, so they use the ballista, and all of a sudden we all realize that she's just standing right in front of it, and we're like, oh no.
Because also none of us can see that they're fighting each other on the roof, because we're all on the ground. Callie's the only one who can see because she's up in the air. She's got her wings up fighting Zacchus, and everyone else is down on the ground at this point. So all we see is like Spooky's climbed up on this building to try and get a better vantage point, and then we just see her rocketed off by a ballista, and this Dragonborn jumped down, and we're all like, oh fuck, what's happening? Yeah, it was intense.
Yeah. So in the last moments of the fight, Kokenee is struggling to remove the last fire shard. I remember Tim there was like a storm sphere going on, and so shooting through it was with disadvantage. And so I remember taking so many shots at this thing and all of them just missing. This was before I was enough cleric to give myself a +10 to hit stuff. So it was just like
you were just like baby level 1, maybe level 2 cleric at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So fine. At this point, Callie, who is fighting with Zacchus, cuts him down midair and drives him down to the ground. Just as Kokenee finally is able to hit the last shot and take the last shard out. As Zacchus dies and the shards are broken, the Chaos Elemental turns volatile. As we try to shield ourselves, it explodes and we're thrown and take big damage.
Yeah, the whole thing just, Tim, he was like, you watch as it kind of starts to collapse out on itself, and it looks like it's going to collapse in, and then everything just like, just explodes out, and it was like 100-foot radius. Like everything gets hit.
The other thing, like up until this part of the fight, was that like of this fight that was so difficult was the storm sphere made everybody move at half speed.
Yeah.
And it was this huge spread out fight. So, Kokenee was like 45 feet from anybody else.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, I can't get anywhere for like without like 3 turns of movement. And Callie was with Zacchus way over there, and Yana was way over there, and
Neppy was like, Neppy and Kamea were at the back because they kept getting pushed out of the storm sphere. Kokenee was the only one managing to stay stable inside the storm sphere, as well as Torren, but Torren was on the other side of the Chaos Elemental, essentially just like punching it in where the equivalent of its kidneys while its back was turned towards facing Kokenee. So Torren's behind. This bit is important. Torren directly, almost in melee, behind the Chaos Elemental. Kokenee about 45 feet from the Chaos Elemental. Neppy and Kamea probably also equivalently about 45 feet, but like
Different direction.
different direction. Like if
Yeah.
Kokenee's at like 2 or 3 o'clock, they're at like noon, and then Callie is directly behind them, up in the air with Zacchus as she just takes her sword and just drives it in the back. And I remember Len's words for Callie at that point, where she like yelled out Zacchus's name as he was starting to like do more damage towards us, and she was just like, Melora sends her regards, and just like sends the sword right down and almost just like cuts him straight down the spine right between his wings. It was fucking amazing. Such a dope Callie kill. It was really good.
So Kokenee is alive after this explosion. Neppy is alive, but barely. Callie is up, and Yana is also barely up. But Kamea is unconscious.
Yeah.
So Callie runs to her, and Neppy uses Spare the Dying to stabilize her, as then sees Torren, who in the explosion was crushed by a boulder. So he had taken the damage of the exploding elemental, and then in that was then hit by the debris of the explosion.
Again, and crushed beneath a boulder.
Yeah.
And like Adam, I think, had been making death saves, but not out like, or he and Tim had been communicating that he'd been making death saves, but that wasn't like outright at the table, so we didn't know how bad it was.
Mhm.
So like Neppy is like running because Grave Clerics can do Spare the Dying as a bonus action. That's part of our class. Spare the Dying is a bonus action, and it's a 30-foot range rather than touch. So Neppy is like, I have like 7 hit points at this point, and I am like, Neppy is prone. She like gets up, she like hand out Spare the Dying as Callie like fly like beaming her way towards Kamea, and Neppy is just running towards Torren, who she sees crushed under this rock. Did you want me to say this part, or do you want this part?
You can go for it.
Okay, so Neppy gets to Torren. She kneels down next to him, and he is like, equivalently, like mechanically, he's dead. But in that moment, like he's clinging on to life, essentially. Like there is a ragged breath coming over him, and Neppy like reaches into her bag to grab the diamonds, and Torren grabs her hand and stops her and puts a necklace in her hand. It looks like a small girl's necklace, like the necklace for a young girl. It's got like a leaf and like a gem of some kind on it. And he shakes his head as he exhales his last breath in front of her, and he dies. And she's shaking, knowing what he's asked her. So as Kokenee is running up, he sees Neppy put the diamonds on his chest, take out salt and copper coins, and she uses Gentle Repose quickly on him, and she collapses on top of him, weeping. And like I was crying. I was a fucking wreck. Just like lying, like Neppy is lying on top of Torren. I could barely get words out about what Neppy was doing. So Kokenee runs up and he like puts the diamonds back in Neppy's hand. He's like, can you bring him back? You can bring him back. And she shakes her head and she's like, he asked me not to. And Kokenee's like, what do you mean he asked you not to? And she's like, I remember this line so well. And it was just like, what kind of world is it if I bring him back and take him from his wife and his children and his people simply because I miss him? And so Neppy is just like, they're just like the two of them. She just like crumples into him, still holding these diamonds, and the both of them are just like sitting in pain next to Torren, who is dead. Neppy knowing that
should
she's
bring him back. Should
Chat-
bring him back with resurrection now.
Chatwater will get there.
Just for
Chatwater
We've
shits and
talked about
gigs.
that
so many times, and I will
Just for shits
Bring
and
his whole
giggles.
family back. That's campaign 2. We all play. Adam plays Torren, and we all play his family and extended family.
Mhm.
Shoddy crazy uncle who hasn't been talked
Like
about.
Wrigley Brothers circus style, circus family.
And so the two of them are just reeling here, and in that moment, the heads of Sindril and Zacchus are collected. Neppy is everyone kind of comes in. And
Time to add to my skull collection.
time to add to my skull collection, still considering her prophecy. And I think it was Callie or Yana who walked over to the shards where the shards were, taking a look at them, and she watches as the shards coalesced into this amulet. And they seem to they create this small amulet shape, and this is the Chaos Talisman, which we now carry and use to plane shift all the time. So looking to Kokenee, she says, he's still in gentle repose, I have to let him go. And not necessarily asking his permission, but basically being please don't make me do this alone. I don't want to do this by myself. So she says, I release you, Torren Blackwater, son of Caradoc and the last Caraxian. And may Nephthisiket guide your journey, and may Arathis welcome you home. And with that, they both take the coins off of his eyes, essentially releasing him from gentle repose and actually letting him die.
So how did he end up in hell?
He's not in hell. Adam just
Well,
likes to make that joke all the time.
Sean likes to make that joke too, and I'd like to expand upon it because before we met dear old Torren, I mean, he was a soldier for the Caraxian Empire.
Yes.
And we haven't really gotten into it, but the Caraxian Empire, famously big on war crimes, and none
Not true.
quite.
Not true.
I mean, I don't know. Were you there? But Torren drinks for a reason.
That's right.
He misses his family, but he also sees the faces of all those innocents that he punched to death.
Sure.
And you have
And,
to be
his
real
family
close to
helped.
punch someone to death. You have to be real close.
Yeah,
You see it.
You see it, you smell it. He was training his kids to follow in the family line. So, they were young, but definitely corrupted.
Absolutely.
That weighs on his soul as well. As it will for eternity in the hells. But at least they're together.
But for the record, canonically, no, Torren is not in hell. And we know that.
He's in a hell of his own making, if you think
Sure.
he's not in the hells, but philosophically speaking, he doesn't believe he deserves to be in, the
good place that he is. There we go.
Yeah, but he's also in hell.
So
people are poking him with little sticks.
So as of this point, we realize that we can't stay here. The city is still this. There are still parts of the city that are on fire. Everything is still crumbling. So we take his body to the temple of Nephthisiket, and Neppy, almost on autopilot, starts preparing his body. It's just she's a wreck at this point, and she falls back on what she knows, the work. She just is okay, I have to do this. This is my job. I have released him, and now I have to prep him for burial. And so she starts going, and Kokenee is standing there also realizing, and she stops, and she's like, what am I doing? He doesn't follow my God. Kokenee's right here. So Neppy almost steps away and is like, Kokenee, I'm so sorry. This is your job. And Kokenee looks at her and he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, do whatever you think is right, and you instruct me how to help. The use of my temple is yours. Go for it. Why don't you take it from here, Matt?
Sure. So Kokenee sort of prays to Arathis for a little bit, and then tries his best at funeral rites. So he ends up setting Torren down with all of his equipment placed around him, and then painting with gold paint in iconography of Arathis on his body. They transport him to a burial place on a hill within the city that overlooks the ocean. Which now, later on, is the location of the Temple of Arathis.
Sick.
Yeah, we bury him and say some words about him as Kokenee places the last amount of dirt on the grave. Neppy has a vision of him rising up out of the grave and feels his essence pass through her and walking through her towards a light behind her, welcome homed by Erathis.
Yeah. And this
Krager,
is all the same session. So we're still reeling from Torren's death. Adam is there in the room watching us all
Probably
process.
eating something ridiculous.
I mean, I don't.
Like a wheel of cheese. Or...
There was so many wheels of cheese and bags of spinach at my house afterwards. But yeah, like he's sitting there. He's crying, watching us all just weep and go through all of this. There was not a dry eye in my, just like a bunch of adults on a Sunday night. Tim was crying. We were all. It was a lot. It was big. Yeah. Go ahead.
So
Keep going, Matt.
Krager then places a headstone in the shape of a cog. It reads, "Here lies Torren Blackwater, father, son, and friend to more than he knew." And as we're walking back from the grave, Kokenee has a vision from Erathis of the temple that he will build for Erathis and the city in hundreds of years with her help and ingenuity. On the way back down, we're offered condolences and care from the townsfolk. And as we walk back with Kamea saying that we can stay at her house, we're asked who we are, and we take Torren's name as our new party name, which is Blackwater.
Yeah. That was all one session. It was like a
pretty chill session.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was like, and I think that was something like we as a group of people just sat in silence for like 10 minutes after that happened in my living room and just shared like before everyone left for the evening. It was just like, we have to be okay and sit here with this for a couple minutes. Yeah. And it's, of course, I don't even know what the drives home were like for people because like it was at Tim and I's house. It was a lot. Yeah. So that takes us to the end of session 23. So session 24, this one is called Following the Storm Without the Calm. Matt, did you want to take it or do you want me to take it?
I'll grab it here.
Go for
as
it.
as we head into the city, Neppy peels off from the group and goes around town, offering prayer and last rites for as many people as she can. She finds her way back to Kamea's house eventually. Before we go rest that night at Kamea's, when Neppy returns, Kokenee finds her outside in a moment of overwhelming grief, one that she didn't want to show the party, and they hold each other in their pain. They're in anguish over Torren, and she reads to him the letter, and she reads it. She asks to read him the letter, and she reads it to him, translating it from Inferno. He tells her that he reciprocates the feelings, and they say their first "I love yous." They start sharing a room that night. At that point,
Yeah. So they're like, why? We had individual rooms prepared for us as Kameas, and it was basically just like Neppy was like, no, I don't need that over there. I don't want to be farther from you than I need to be.
It was that classic scene from the movie. One room or two, and then they look at each other and they, what?
One? Yeah.
What?
Yeah, which was it was a cool moment. And like when so you had talked about the letter, Sean, from the previous session. So like before we went into the Battle of the Docks, I had a copy of the letter that was written out in like a cipher. Essentially, it was in an infernal font that I had found and like written out as like a 1-to-1 cipher, like
Wingdings.
Sure, like an infernal, dark, devilish
Wingdings is infernal, dark, and devilish.
Sure. So I gave that to Matt, and then in the previous session, when they were on the Temple of Cord, Tim was had made us roll some checks to like translate the first couple lines. So basically, I said to Matt, I was like, "There you go, there's the cipher." And he's like, "Do I get to translate it now?" And I was like, "Just wait, just wait, just wait, just wait." So then, yeah, I was, because Neppy's intention, I think I've talked about this before, was to teach him Infernal so that he could read the letter himself, so that they would spend more time together. It wouldn't be like I am dumping literally all of these feelings onto you in a moment. And so you can learn it. We'll spend more time together, and then you'll be able to read the letter for yourself and understand what it means. And then at the end of this, like, basically from what happened at the previous session, Neppy was like, there's no time. Like, one of us could be dead tomorrow. So I'm going to read, I want to read this to you if you'll let me. So she read it to him. Yeah, it was cool. And I know, Sean,
Yeah.
you'd had a request for the letter. Did you want to read it? Did you want to hear it?
Yeah. Go for it if you got it.
I
Which I know you do.
I do. Give me a sec here.
Can you read it to us in Inferno, please?
Nope.
Yeah, please.
Nope.
Please?
What about please though?
What about please? I'll read
You
it.
won't.
Put it this way. I'll read it to you in Neppy's accent. That's what
That's
you'll get.
great. That's a fair.
What does
I'll
Neppy's accent
amend.
sound like in Inferno? Like, because Inferno's like a guttural, like demon language.
No, in canon, I have it so that it's almost like Infernal is more of a like it sounds quite musical. Like the more guttural language would be Abyssal. That would be the darker language of it. Infernal is quite it's like a musical. I've taken essence from Arabic and Turkish words to create some of the words of Neppy's language, but yeah, to me it's quite like a musical, melodic language. There would be more.
Like Welsh.
Oh sure, yeah. Sure. Welsh. Let me just find it here. Sorry, one sec.
The famously musical language.
I don't know. I know the accent is. I love the Welsh accent. It's super
Yeah.
musical.
Good.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's very silly.
I'm sorry. I am. Matt, maybe while I find this thing, maybe you can speak a bit about what was going on for Kokenee while this was happening.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was a very fun part of the game, sort of in the way that Kokenee had so much going on at this point, where you're like, oh, I just buried my friend because I'm now the high priest of a religion that I didn't know existed like days ago, and now there's this, person that I have interest in for the first time, basically ever. It was very like excited homeschool kids.
Oh yeah, big homeschool energy.
But yeah, it was really nice. But another part of it that was sort of scary and not so nice, and it's a little bit later, I guess, a touch, but he sort of knew that when her prophecy was done, she was supposed to go back to Felinis. And so he's like, am I falling for somebody who is about to leave?
Classic homeschool kid mistake. You meet someone at camp.
Yeah.
You fall in love and you maintain a long distance relationship.
Yeah.
You're like, we'll meet at camp and Easter, and oh boy.
Yeah. So it was like, we've met at camp. Does she have to go home? She lives across town. Like, I have a girlfriend now, guys. Like, she's real. I met her at camp. She goes to a different school.
Okay, I found it. You guys ready?
Who are you telling this to? You're at homeschooled.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I have
your
two
dad's
shirts,
like your dad's like, you don't have a girlfriend. You're like, I swear, Dad.
Okay.
It's actually, I've got two shirts. It's me and the shirt that were there trying to convince the other shirt that didn't make it that day.
I like to think that Kokenee probably
Sentient
ruined a shirt on the day of the was
Nothing that can't be mended.
But then we just mend it.
We just mend it and we clean it. Okay. Oh my god, I have to read this in Neppy's accent, not in game. Okay. To my constant guidance, my brightest star, and my dearest heart. I can hear you. Oh my god, that's not her voice. Okay, here we go. I can hear you denying these epithets already. That you could never hold them, never carry them, that they could never apply to you. That you have never and could never and will never deserve them, especially not from me. To that, dear one, I say too late. You are all these things and thousands more. You contain multitudes, and it cannot be helped. It was my hope that this would be a way for me to adequately express my feelings, but now it seems too small. That these words could carry the gravity and depth and weight of what it means to care for you. That a quick scratch of a pen on parchment could fix love, and reading it would permeate its way into your heart. It seems impossible, yet here we are. The trials we face are many, and I find I am often travelling through them in a daze if I am not careful. I am so far from home, and so far from anything familiar to me. In a few short years, my understanding of the world has increased exponentially, and yet I still know nothing. You could fill novels with the things I do not know. My first 2 years outside the temple, I was surrounded by more people than ever before, yet I could feel nothing but longing. Longing to bring honor to my goddess, longing for days beyond this prophecy. This still doesn't sound like her voice because I can't hear myself in the side, so I
It
apologize
sounds
if
great to me, Em. You're
it's
doing
off.
so good.
Thank you. But there was an unknown yearning, something she was not part of. This was a longing for someone to fill a space that had fallen open in my heart, a space I did not know existed for so many years before. This was never something I thought that would happen to me. I am a daughter of prophecy, woven into a path that was designed for me and now cannot exist without me. I would lay down my life to see that the end of days foretold does not come to fruition. So what if my heart lay empty? Nowhere in the prophecy was it said that the high priestess of Nepthysiket could fall in love. But, like you, prophecies contain multitudes. There was no mention of our group, no mention of your goddess and her freedom, no mention of the chaos that stemmed from 4 rather than 1. But my goddess is wise and evermore. She knew I could not do this alone and sent me the best aid she could. 3 gifts beyond imagining. First, the gift of companionship, of camaraderie and friendship, to those who would care for me beyond duty and penance. Second, the gift of knowledge, those to teach me of the world and its history, so that I may be the arbiter of the divine balance that I am meant to be. And finally, like you, I was bestowed the gift of choice. I have been given the choice to love, the choice to give myself not only to the cause, but to another if I wish to the one who may fill the chasm of my soul and stem its unraveling. With this gift comes a sense of free will unlike I have ever known, and with this gift comes endless possibility for me to walk my own history rather than act according to pre-divined rule and scripture. But with great choice comes great uncertainty. The future we run into is the future we run headlong towards is unknown and ever changing, and this will take you weeks to understand this letter fully. The words will ring just as true when you are able to read them in my ancestral tongue. You are the blood flowing through my fingers in ritual. You are the lightning strike across an endless plain. You are the earth on which I travel, foundation on which to write our circumstance. I will stand steadfast in your darkness, unbowed, unwavering, welcoming. I will burn like oil in a lamp for you, casting light into every corner until you can see what I can see. I will let nothing burn it out. No prophecy, no sultan, no grave. You are my choice, and I would be yours if you would have me. That was it.
So good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she reads him that and is just like waiting for him to process that. And then I can imagine there's a lot going on in his head about that. And then he tells her, he's like, yeah, I feel the same way.
Sick. I'm in. That's great.
Sick,
I
I'm in.
believe
Cool.
the
Ditto.
exact words were "ditto, dude."
Yeah, ditto did. Yeah. And
Is
so
that true or is that a joke?
That's a joke.
that's
a joke.
absolutely a
Okay.
joke.
I think that's a good line. That's funny.
Yeah.
Ditto, dude.
If I remember right, he
That's
basically
smooch.
tells her that like there will come a day where I have to make choices, and if you are the choice, you are the choice I have to make. I will make the same choice thousands of times over again. Yes. Like, and then they're just like, okay, we're together now. Okay, we don't know what this is, but we're together. That's it. And then I think he asks her. He was like, "Are you going to go home? Do you have to go home?" And she was like, "I'm sure I'll have to go home at some point, but I do so much more here than I ever could behind the walls of Philenis. So if I go, I want all of you to come with me. I want you to come with me. Saying that to him. And I think that's where they leave it at that point, because there was no call. Like, I think I expected immediately following the Battle of Gatestone Keep for Neppy, when Neppy checked in with them, to be like, yep, Hade says that you have to go back to Filenis. And obviously not. So the next morning, did you want to take it, Matt, or do you want me to?
Sure, I got it.
Go for it.
The next morning, we learn that Admiral Kazim is going to be returning from Svel-En. King Evard was wounded, but the city was well defended and the fleet was defeated. The fleet are now returning from Svel-En and are still trying to hunt down the Queen's killer, Mira N, Evard's daughter.
Which we know is not true because Mira is in the scar.
Mhm.
And we don't know who it was at this point, but we surmise that someone has disguised themselves like Mira, which we learned later was Sindral doing. Like, she was the one who had disguised herself like Mira.
On the council, Kamea, Andaz, Wendell, and Kazim remain. The rest had been killed.
Wendell, fan favorite. Voice of reason.
It's been around for so long.
Neppy communes with Nephthisicat, asking if she is to return to Filenis, but Nephthisicat wishes her to stay with Blackwater and Kokenee. Neppy asks of Torren, but Nephthisicat says that he is beyond her sight. We go to a council meeting with Kamea, and they take stock of what has happened. Kazim is on his way back to Wolfreen and will return with the fleet in a few days. We are gifted a keep by the council, and
Blackwater
that
Keep.
it can be renovated to our wishes.
That's our house.
We return to Kamea's house briefly and are informed of the pyrite in the bad bag of golding.
Yeah, I think that how that went was like, we essentially come back from this council meeting. We're still reeling about everything. And Neppy goes to be like, Kamea, we're going to be staying here. She's like, had offered to have us stay there until our keep was ready. And we were like, okay, this is great. I was like, please let us contribute to food and costs and stuff like that. So we go to take some money out of the bag, and Gregor, who is with us, looks at us and goes, this is pyrite. And we're like, what? And then there's a moment where Neppy just dumps the bag of golding onto the table, and she's like, can you check all of it? And it's all of it is pyrite, or like fools. Anything that is gold is, the gems are fine, but all of the idols and everything is all pyrite. It's all fool's gold. And there's like priceless artifacts of Nephthisicat and Arathis are gone.
Yep.
Yeah. Neppy's devastated.
Yeah.
And we know how that worked out.
In the money
Yes,
hole.
it's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine.
Kokenee
I
and
like the fact
Spooky.
that
Sorry.
Kamea would have been like, sure, yeah, you can help pay, and then you're like, Gregor's like, it's all fake, and she would have been like, you guys trying to pay me with fake money. They offer to help, and then they bust out counterfeit shit.
They're a fucking scam artist.
Like, who are these
That's
guys?
us.
Well, apparently Tim had been rolling insight or like perception or investigation checks for each of the shopkeepers that we had been paying with this money for all of the things since we had gotten the bag of golding from Zamlux, which had been a long time. This was in Svel-En, in the like beholder's lair. We found this bag, and they had all failed. None of them had noticed that it was counterfeit. So we could have noticed that so earlier, but nobody did. We didn't notice at all. So a shock to the party, for sure.
So Kokenee and Spooky go for a walk through the town after the meeting. We go to a magic shop, the Mystics, and meet Tova. She agrees to spend the afternoon taking a look at the bag as she's seen them before. We can come back the next day. Kokenee sells Delnis's shield to her for some big coin,
Nice.
which he gives to Spooky for her spellbook. People tend to follow them around, hoping for a glimpse of the people who saved Wolfreen.
Yeah.
They then go and get a platinum band from a jeweler and look for another one where they meet Erkin,
Erkin!
a dwarf obsessed with platinum and trying to buy more, but we have no luck finding any. He was buying it for over its fair value.
I think
Yeah.
it's funny that you can now see, looking back at it, that Money Hole was definitely the next arc Tim was trying to force you guys to go down, because it's like, oh, this money bag doesn't work. Also, here's a guy named Erkin with the platinum, and you guys were like, nah, this is not anything, and then
So-
did something else.
Yeah, so I believe Tim was saying that the finding Erkin was at this point was because we rolled a natural 20 on investigation to find a person to buy platinum from.
Because Kokenee wanted to make Neppy a band for warding bond.
Erkin was a goof that then goofed all of us.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a fun jest that then stopped being fun very quickly.
Came around to bite us in the butt. Our fun
Very
all
quickly.
stopped.
It was like a long time later.
Yeah.
Neppy and Callie, on the other hand, go for a walk on the other side of town. They talk about tattoos and meet some children in town who saw them the day before. Callie gets a tattoo apprenticeship with Augie Burnbuck.
Augie, hell yeah.
So she's like, Neppy, I've always wanted to tattoo. And Neppy's like, okay, let's find you a tattoo shop.
Yeah,
I was like,
carpe diem, let's go.
I was like, do you want a tattoo right now? She's like, no, I want to become proficient with tattooing. And I'm like, that's dope. Because Neppy's got, her tattooing is not tattoos per se, it's like metal inlaid to her skin. So she's like, that's wonderful, that's great, let's go find you a tattoo shop. You won't have tattoos like these ones, but like, let's go, because Callie's got tattoos. She's like, let's go find you a shop. So we find the shop, we go to Augie's, and she manages to talk her way into apprenticeship with Augie. He's like, yeah, whenever you're in town, you want to come do some tattoos? Cool. Okay. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you keep going, Matt?
Yeah, so as they are walking through the city, they meet a young man wearing heavier armor and carrying a spear. He's youthful, wearing red and blue, and he introduces himself as Finin of House Aganis from Wolfreen, and is honored to meet us. He was in the group that fought at Croden's Cross, and his father is a high-ranking military officer, and he was proud to fight alongside us. He would be proud to fight alongside us in any way we can. He offers to accompany us through the city, and Neppy and Callie agree, and they invite him over for dinner.
So at this point, it's like Adam has jumped in as his character, and we're like, okay. And when the way that Tim introduced it, he's like, for a second, Neppy, you think it's Torren. He's like, same haircut, holding a spear, silhouetted by the sun. And there was a moment for me as Neppy where I was just like, is this divine intervention? Like, is Torren just back? I was like, I didn't raise him from I didn't bring him back, but is he just here?
Mm-hmm.
Because we had gone a week and I had not been sure what Adam's character decisions were about whether he was rolling a new character or whether Torren was just coming back in some way, like narrative way. And then he introduces, and then we get closer and we see that is this young boy, like a 15, 16-year-old boy. And we're just like, okay. And so I think, and it's like, obviously it's like Adam's new character, so I'm not going to be like, no, we don't want to hang out with you. But it's just also like trying to find a way for him to come into the party. And he's like, may I accompany you through the city? And we're like, sure. Okay. Why didn't you come to dinner? Like, I'd love to hear about, your experience in Croden's Cross. Why didn't you come to dinner? And we're heading back there now. Would you like to come join us? And he's like, to have dinner with all of you? With the group that saved Wolfreen? And we're like, I mean, sure. Like, why not at this point? And I think for me, something that was going through my head as Neppy is like, Neppy feels incompetent. She feels like she has failed. She didn't keep her friend alive. She's still reeling from the grief of that. It has not even been 24 hours since we've put Torren in the ground. And here is someone, and maybe it's a bit selfish for her, but here is someone who looks at her like she's not falling apart.
Mm.
And so she's like, okay, it's a big deal to meet someone who is your, I guess not your hero, but like someone you look up to. So she wants to give this young man that. She's like, okay, I don't want you to hold the grief that I hold. You don't need to see the grief. You don't need to see me falling apart. Why don't you come with us for dinner? Even if it's just a quick visit, just come on. So we go.
And it wasn't just a quick visit.
Go ahead, Matt. Let's talk about what happened.
Yeah, so So they bring him back, and basically Kokenee, I mean all of them had just lost and buried their friend. And so Kokenee is back at home, and Neppy and Callie come back, basically from how he saw it, being like, "Look, we found a you know a young, basically Torren, and he's asked to accompany us for a little bit." Um, and Kokenee was pretty upset about that. He had just buried his friend and really didn't want to bury another person, um, and was quite upset about the idea of like basically having a Torren lookalike just sort of coming to accompany us for a while. Um, and so Kokenee gets very upset at his presence, and they end up fighting each other outside in the street for a little bit. They both take a few hits. Neppy is quite frustrated, and her and Kokenee argue about it as they're grieving Torren. And that was quite a lot of sort of difficult conflict.
Yeah.
They later in that night talk through it and settle it down, and are all right about it. But that was like a very difficult moment for, I think, most of the party.
Totally. It was a hard reality to face, that it's like, okay, our friend is dead, Torren is dead, and here is someone who almost idolizes what Torren did and idolizes us and is a boy. This is a young boy.
Yeah.
Um and here we are trying to make him feel welcome, and um I know Neppy was just like, felt like she was just trying to do a nice thing for another person, um, and then in like to kind of salve her own hurting, and then to see the two of them fight in the street, she got so frustrated, and she was just like, if you kill him, I am going to bring him back. And I was like, you need to bring me his body and I will bring him back if you kill him. And Kokenee got really upset about that, because he was just like, you've just told me you love me no matter what, and you're not able right now to handle my grief and my pain. And Neppy's like, she's like, you're right. Like, I wasn't able to handle it. I've got my own grief, and your anger was so overwhelming. And it's almost like they're battling with the fact that, like, I remember one of Kokenee's lines was like, I won't bury a boy. I won't do it. I will not bury a young man with his entire life ahead of him. And he's like, what, is he coming with us now? Is he going to just be part of our party? And Neppy's like, I don't have the power to say that. I don't have the power to do that. So it was a bit like, these fresh new feelings as well as grief, and they're still trying to manage all of this. So it was a lot, but they sort through it eventually, and they reconcile, and are like, okay, we give Torren a chance, or give Finin a chance, give him some space, and try and give him the childhood, or the care that neither of us got, in a different way. Yeah. It was hard. It was a hard shift having Finin come into the party. It was a big shift for the entire party, for sure. And then
Then what happened?
well, this was almost the end of the session, and that was almost it. And then later that evening, Neppy sends to Hade and essentially calls. She's like, the only person here is Softly. Please send more acolytes and more priestesses to Wolfrine. Like, we need to be, there is work here for us in the city. Please do this. Please, can you send over? And Hade says, of course, there will be priestesses and acolytes on the next boat over. So we're like, great. So then she sends to Kern, and is just like, he and Mira are surviving. They're alive, but they're now owned by a being named Zamarod. They don't know what type of being he is, but we know Zamarod is a Dao. Or Zamarod a giant?
Zamarod was a giant.
Is a giant. Zamarod was a giant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And she's like, she promises him that we're coming soon. We just need a little more time to deal with the council in the city, because like pressure had been coming on pretty hot on us. And we said we'll come for you as soon as we can. We'll be we'll be there soon. And we rest for the night. And that is it.
That's it.
We did it.
We did it.
Elemental Chaos Arc. We did it.
Chatwater, we got there.
We
Took
got
like
there.
2 weeks longer than we wanted, but
Maybe 3.
Matt
We are beholden to no one. We are.
Matt was supposed to
own
come for
show.
1 episode. He's been here for a month and a half.
Thank you,
Much
Matt.
like Finin.
Matt, also big thank you to joining us for this arc.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Oh
been
my
lovely.
gosh, so nice. So nice to have another person who was there. And we're so close to meeting letters. We're so
Yeah.
close.
So close.
We have like,
Very
let me see if I
excited.
can find here. Let me see if I can
It's like
find
you go to the Scar. I think there's like 2 sessions.
maybe
and
2
then
or
it's
3
like,
sessions.
And who's this fucking guy? Who's this handsome devil?
Who's this handsome Minotaur? Yeah, it was right after, because we have 2 or 3 episodes. We have the second Adonis one shot that happened that we will talk about, and then the next session after we get into the pit fighting, and talk about that, and then we meet our dear old letters. So we're almost there.
And Blackwater's complete.
Blackwater is complete as it is. Yeah. Wow, we got there, you guys. Chatwater.
We did it.
We
So proud of
got
us.
there. So proud of us. Only took 7 parts. I did say that this arc was a big one.
Yeah.
So we will be starting on the Earth Elemental Plane, the first Earth Elemental Plane arc next time on Chatwater. I believe Len is joining us.
Hell yeah.
Len is going to join us for a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about how Callie's doing. And how Callie's feeling. We'll get some Callie updates. And then we will dive into the Earth Elemental Plane arc. But that's it. That's all we got for you.
Heck yeah.
That's it. That's all.
Yeah. Please come hang out with us on Wednesday for Behind the Screen. And then, of course, we will be back on Saturday for our main campaign. We thank you all for coming tonight. We love you all. Good night, you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.